What's up, Prop Nation? It's your boy John here today. We're back with another Thursday night football special. Dallas Cowboys are going to MetLife to play their division rival, the New York Giants, although it hasn't been much of a rivalry in years gone by. I'm trying to think back to week one of the NFL season last year where the Dallas Cowboys blew out the Giants 40-0. And we'll see how much has changed in this one. Cowboys currently favored -4.5 on the road. Over under sitting at 44 at the moment. I believe it opened 44.5. And money's going towards the under. Cowboys have played in only overs games this year, but Giants have played in only unders games. So that would be why. If you're watching us on YouTube, please like and subscribe to this because that really helps us out. Leave a comment as well. I want to know what your favorite picks are, your favorite props as well. I've had some cool comments through the week coming in on last week's Sunday slate, which started really, really well. And then as the afternoon games kicked off, the 4 o'clock games, man, we took a huge nosedive. But you know what? Juwan Jennings, he was our silver lining. We were all over Juwan Jennings last week. He really came through for us. Our Thursday night record at this stage, we are sitting at 7-8. So nowhere near as good as last season. Last season, we were sitting around 70% victory. We want to get back to where we were last week, and I've got a couple of awesome picks for you. Sunday slate record, though, is 13-8. So even though we had a really bad week 3, tell me who didn't, we're still doing okay. We're still rolling at 13-8 on Sunday slate record. So without further ado, let's get into some of our favorite props for this Thursday night special on Amazon Prime if you're watching in the US. So without further ado, let's get into this Thursday night football game. Should be pretty good. I'm excited for it. I'm excited to watch Malik Nabers play. I'm excited to see how the Dallas Cowboys play in this game because they need a win badly. And boy, have the Giants not come soon enough for them. So we'll take a look at how the Giants have been performing over the first 3 weeks of the season. By all accounts, had a great victory in Cleveland, but we know what the Cleveland Browns are now, so the victory looks a little bit less meaningful in that regard. Then the Saints came to Arlington, and they smashed them. They were all over them, a really, really high-scoring game. And then last week, the game against the Ravens was interesting because I was on the Ravens for this one because in my mind, the Ravens had to win this game. Doesn't matter if it was in Texas or if it was in Baltimore. Had to win this game. So it was almost a coin flip anyway. The over-under was sitting at 48.5, and of course it went over. Lamar just came alive. I mean, Lamar has been that team, and they've struggled against rushing quarterbacks. Even Deshaun Watson got over his prop lines as well. So even though they've been able to defend the pass a little bit, the Cowboys, which I think they will be able to do again in this spot, they have been gettable on the ground, whether it's a rushing quarterback or a rushing specialist. Alvin Kamara had a fantastic game against them. Derrick Henry. So the Baltimore Ravens basically ran 45 rushing plays in this game, which is an insane amount between Lamar, Derrick Henry, and Justice Hill. And they did have some success with Rashad Bateman as well. Rashad Bateman's actually had a pretty good season, though, low-key. You probably wouldn't have realized, but if you have a look at his prop betting, he's gone all over so far. So that's interesting to see from a receiver 2 perspective. And then these tight ends last week for the Ravens, man. Mark Andrews, 1 target. I think I saw something he ran like 4 routes as well. Isaiah Likely just not involved at all. So not too much to take away from the tight ends there. Daniel Bellinger for the Giants, though, man. He's not been involved either. So I'm not going to bet anything on him, although I don't have too much on the Giants for this one. But we'll see what Malik Nabers is going to give us. Recognize, though, that the receiver ones for teams, so Zay Flowers had a down game. Chris Olave did get over, although he didn't even need the 5.5 receiving line that he got. He did have an explosive play going over 24.5, longest reception. And then Amari Cooper had an absolute dud fest in Cleveland, but he did have something like 12 targets in that game. So interesting the way that turned out. I actually am on Devin Singletary for this game. I actually like the idea that you can rush on this Dallas Cowboys team. I mean, there's a huge drop. Okay, it's a huge difference between Alvin Kamara and Derrick Henry and then Devin Singletary. He's probably closer to that Jerome Ford kind of line. So even as we talk this through, maybe I will jump off it because I'm expecting a line of around 50.5. and Jerome Ford was not even close. We take a look at the New York Giants defense. So as I mentioned earlier, all their games have gone under, and they've not been big lines. They've been sitting around 41.5, 39.5 last week against Cleveland, and that was a snooze fest to say the least. But they did pull out the win in that game. So everyone can kind of relax. And I almost feel like that actually is bad for them in this game, in this spot facing Dallas, who is going to take out a lot of pent-up rage on them. Quarterbacks have struggled to throw on the Giants. Now, that's Deshaun Watson, so we can't really take too much away from that. Jaden Daniels did have a good game, and we saw Jaden Daniels have a really good game against Cincinnati last week on Monday Night Football as well, so keep that in mind. But Sam Darnold, maybe it was just because it was week one and everyone was a little bit rusty, but he didn't get his 229.5 prop line. He also didn't throw that much as well, though. Teams were rushing on the Giants. So Aaron Jones had a really, really good game. We saw Brian Robinson as well and Austin Eckler both have relatively okay games. And then we just talked about Cleveland, who in week one played the Giants, but they don't really have a run game at the moment. So I know that Jerome Ford again, or maybe this one was Deonta Foreman. Actually, I think it was Jerome Ford, didn't get that 49.5 rushing line. I'm just not really taking anything away from that. Now, having said that, Zeke and Rico Dowdle, who are the main rushers for the Cowboys, again, I'm not on either of them for this one, just because it has been split. When it hasn't been split, it's been hard to know who the primary rusher is. And when they've been the primary rusher, they haven't been very efficient. It's all happening through the air, and that's the way we're going to play this. Mari Cooper had a really good game against the Giants last week, which was finally nice to see. I know that, so it's hard to take away from Terry McLaurin not making his line in week 2, just because, again, rookie quarterback, they're still getting that offense together. And then Justin Jefferson, he still had an okay game, even though he didn't get to that 81.5 receiving yards line. Similarly with the receiver too. So Jordan Addison got injured in that game, and that's why he didn't get there. And then, believe it or not, Luke McCaffrey actually had a pretty good game for Washington. And then week 3, the receiver 2, which I believe was Jerry Jeudy in this spot, he didn't get to his line, even though he did have the catches. But tight end, they were able to do it on the ground with tight end. So that's the way we're going to attack this, because this will be the best tight end that they're going to play so far. I know Zach Ertz has been pretty good. I think it's Josh Oliver for Minnesota, who even had a really good game against them. And then whoever Cleveland was trotting out last week, I'm trying to think off the top of my head, who's their backup tight end? I think it's Jordan Akins, potentially. Even he had a really good game. So Jake Ferguson, we're going to fire him up. Let's take a look at him. Let's start with the quarterbacks. All right, started off with Dak Prescott is the first way we want to play this. And he's got a passing yards line of 260.5, and I'm into it. I want to take the over on this one. Understand he didn't get that against Cleveland, but that game was a blowout so early on, so quickly, that game got away from them, so they didn't need to. And then against the Saints and against the Ravens, where they had to fight right until the end, he went way over. So we saw vintage Dak, where I think he had something like 51 pass attempts. Completions were in the 30s. Even though he did throw multiple touchdowns, he's been good for at least one, so I'm into this. You might have also seen on the Giants' defensive graphic as well, teams have been able to get a couple of explosive plays against them. So Baltimore has been able to limit explosive plays. At times, they've sort of been getting between that 25 to 34 passing yard reception mark, whereas I think the Giants are in the similar boat. So I think deep bombs to any of these receivers will be absolutely fine to play. So I'm into 260.5 passing yards. I'm also into longest play over 34.5 passing yards as well. You could take a look at pass attempts as well. This is interesting. Like, what's to say that the Cowboys are all over the Giants and then they just commit to the run for the rest of the game? I just don't see that happening, because the Cowboys are 1-2 and they need to win this game. This is absolutely must win, especially considering it's a division rival. So I think we're going to see a lot of pent-up rage. They're going to lay the smack down on the Giants. It'll be interesting to see how the Giants defend that. Hopefully Brian Burns can just have like an all-time game. That would be awesome to see as well. We'll take a really quick look at Daniel Jones. I'm not really betting too much here. He's had a passing yards line of about 213, if that. And okay, so he had a good game against Cleveland, but they're in shambles at the moment. If you have a look at the longest passing completion as well, it's under 34.5 every single week. These explosive plays, I mean, Malik Nabers is making them happen, but they're just not really getting those take the top of your defense explosive plays. I wonder if, like, in primetime Thursday night football, this is like kind of the week where they just kind of always throw these deep bombs, backs against the wall type game. I don't know. Maybe if they hadn't won last week's game, it'd be a bit different. Let's stay off Daniel Jones for this one. We'll take a quick look at Zeke and Rico, and I'm not playing either of these guys either. I do understand if you want to, though, because the Giants' run D has not been particularly good, but, I mean, Zeke's had a rushing line of like 30.5, and he just can't even get there. 9.5 rush attempts, he can't get over that as well. It's actually been a lot more Rico Dowdle involved, so if anything, if his line is sitting around 31.5, I'm going to have a quick look now. His line is sitting anywhere around 31.5 up to 35.5 as well. I actually think I'm okay with that because if he's been getting at least 8 rushing attempts in every single spot, then that could be okay. If his receptions as well is sitting around 1.5 catches, I don't mind that as well. He's had at least 1 catch in every game. Last 2 games, he's had at least 2 as well. And he's been getting his scrimmage as well. So Dak likes him as a dump down option as well. Definitely betting Rico Dowdle if I'm going to play this anyway over Zeke. We take a look at Devin Singletary. I am on Devin Singletary for this game. I know it's going to be a tough spot, but the Giants, they need to run the ball through Devin Singletary. And Devin Singletary right now is top 5 in running back usage as well. He's sitting at 14.5 rush attempts. Would not be surprised if through the week that actually goes up to 15, even 16 rush attempts. If he's got a line as well of about 50.5 rushing yards, I'm into that as well. It could be up as high as 60 I've seen. That's where it's starting to get a little bit risky, but I think they're going to be rushing the ball a lot. Looks like the days of the 1.5 receptions are gone as well. He had 4 catches in his week 1 performance against Minnesota. He had 4 catches last week as well against the Browns. So he's up at there's some books that have got him around 3.5 receptions. If you can find a 3.5, be keen to bet the under there just because I think a lot of Daniel Jones is going to go through Malik Nabers and Wan'Dale Robinson. So unders could be there, but he has been heavily used. So rushing, receiving, scrimmage, I'm into all of it. He's even actually been pretty explosive. He's had 2 longest rushes go over 13.5 as well. So consider that, especially when you have a look at how the Cowboys have done. But again, completely different crop, completely different breed to Derrick Henry and the week 2 performance against Alvin Kamara here that we're looking at. If we have a look at the Cowboys receivers here, this is where I'm going to be all over CeeDee Lamb. Right now, he's sitting around 80.5 receiving yards, which is not a bad line at all. Some books have even got him right now at 75.5 receiving yards. I understand he had 67 receiving yards last week against the Ravens. Again, Ravens were backs against the wall type game. That was a spot where it's like Kyle Hamilton had to play one of his best games. And look, he was okay. He was fine. CeeDee did not get up to that 6.5 receptions that he needed line. So he's been under every single week. So keep that in mind. But on the flip side, he's been highly explosive. He's had a longest receptions line of 25.5 every single week, and he's got it every single week. I want to jump back on that. So this is the way I kind of want to play this. You could play the 75.5 receiving yards. You could also just play the longest reception over 25.5 because it's like I've been explaining, like, when the line is going to be that high, usually with someone like Tyreek Hill or something like that, with these alpha receivers, they're going to have, in order for them to get to that 100.5 receiving yards line, they're going to have explosive plays. We saw this last week with Jamar Chase, who's kind of done nothing all season long. And then boom, plays Washington, has an amazing game. And I'm expecting something similar for CeeDee Lamb. So I'm going to play over the longest reception, but completely understand if you want to go receiving yards as well. I'm not going to touch the 6.5 receptions at all, but just because that hasn't really come through. Other way I really want to play this, Jake Ferguson. So the tight end, we already talked about this earlier. Giants have not been very good at stopping these tight ends. Now Jake Ferguson's going to have a line of about 39.5. He might even have 4.5 receptions. The 4.5 receptions I'm really not into at all because that's a lot, the 5 catches. I understand he had 6 catches last week against the Ravens. But the receiving yards of 40 and a half, 39 and a half, right around there, that is perfectly in line with where I want it. He had 95 receiving yards last week. And I want to go back to this, especially in a spot where Giants are they're probably going to be the least powerful, strong opponent against tight ends as well with these linebackers. We'll finish with the Giants receivers. And as you can see, Malik Nabers is completely the way I want to play this. I saw an amazing stat that it's something like he is the number 3 most productive receiver of all time through their first 3 games behind Anquan Bolden and, of course, Puka Nacua last season. Right now, he's got a line of 70 and a half. So if you can find between 65 to 70 and a half, I think even on Action Network, I was having a look, there's some lines that are up to like 73, 75 and a half as well. So see where you can get in there. His receptions, his catches have gone up to 6.5. So I'm going to play receiving yards here. I think this is a spot where teams have been able to pass a little bit on the Cowboys, as we talked about. We talked about the game Chris Olave had. And then we talked about Zay Flowers a little bit. I just think that that's more a product of Zay Flowers. I think Zay Flowers and Malik Nabers are stylistically completely different receivers. And I think they're going to be in for a bit of a surprise here. So longest reception over 21 and a half. I think there's going to be bombs involved. I think there's going to be a lot of yards. We'll see about the receptions. The 6.5 is risky. You'll also see I've highlighted Wan'Dale Robinson, who I'm also really into this game as well. I was on Wan'Dale Robinson week 1 when his receiving line was 27.5. I thought that was criminal. That was amazing. And he had 44. That was awesome to see. He had 61 receiving yards last week against the Browns. And now they've got him sitting about 35.5, which is a terrific line that I'm really, really into. So I'm going to take a look at that as well. Receptions, he's up to 4.5. I don't love that. Okay, he had 7 receptions last week. I don't always expect that to repeat, even though he had 6 in week 1. He did have 2 against Washington. So that's the way I want to attack this. Through Malik Nabers, CeeDee Lamb, Wan'Dale Robinson, there's a lot of really good passing options to be had here. Even though both teams aren't as strong against the run, you don't always have to play that way. As far as Jalen Hyatt goes, you haven't been able to get anything through him. Same with Bellinger at tight end, and I don't love this spot as well. I think Micah Parsons is going to be pretty fired up from the off-ball linebacker position on the edge. As well. Darius Slayton, I'll probably stay off him this week, even though he's usually been pretty good. I'm just not looking that way. And then there's really no one else after that. That's going to do it for another edition of Thursday Night Football, NFL Cowboys at Giants. Thank you for tuning in. If you're still watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe. That really helps us out. You can follow us on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter as well as Reddit. A lot of people started following us on Reddit, which has been really, really cool to see. I've been putting my bets up there. I think I was going to get a Discord server going. I might just keep it going on Reddit because there's a lot of community involvement there, a lot of great comments, a lot of great interactions we've been having as well, which we'll be sharing on the Sunday slate. We will be back with the Sunday slate episode as well. Sully and I have got some really great picks for you coming. And there's also the AFL Footy Grand Final episode as well. You can check out. That's coming to you right now at the moment. See that before Saturday, before the great game that will take place. We'll see you for the Sunday slate episode if you're kicking around. Until then, enjoy the games. Bye for now.
Don't let the game play you. Stay in control. Gamble responsibly. In Australia, phone 1-800-858-858 for free and confidential support. In Canada, learn about safer play at Know the Risks from the Responsible Gambling Council at knowtherisks.ca. In America, must be 21 or older and present in Arizona. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT STEP to 53342. Colorado, gambling problem? Call 1-800-522-4700. Connecticut, if you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat. In Illinois, Maryland, New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Virginia, and West Virginia, call 1-800-GAMBLER. In Indiana, gambling problem? Call 1-800-9-WITH-IT. Kansas, gambling problem? Getting help is your best bet. Call 1-800-522-4700 or visit ksgamblinghelp.com. Louisiana, if you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call 1-877-770-STOP. In Massachusetts, call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support. Play it smart from the start or call 1-800-GAM-1234. In Michigan, gambling problem? Call 1-800-270-7117 for confidential help. In New York, for help with a gambling problem, call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. Tennessee gambling problem? Call Tennessee Redline 1-800-889-9789. Wyoming gambling problem? Call 1-800-522-4700. Prop Nation betting show is for entertainment purposes only and should in no way be considered financial advice.